Welcome back. On behalf of the GIZ Open Regional Fund for Southeast Europe Energy, Transport and Climate Protection team and myself, I would like to welcome you to the Southeast Europe Conference Day panel discussion. Today we are going to discuss about a lot of things, but we will have opportunity to hear experiences from different countries and institutions. We will discuss best practices, but also the challenges faced by all those determined to take action on energy, transport, and climate planning. In particular, it will be exciting to hear about current practices and experiences in implementing plans and strategies that will lead us to our common ultimate goal on decarbonization of the transport and energy sector. We know we will still have a long way to go, so I suggest we get started. Firstly, we will watch a video together on Southeast Europe showcase of good practices in urban mobility together. This video was made for last year's Transport and Climate Change Week and will remind us on what we did, but maybe more importantly, what we promised we would undertake. So let's look together the video.
We want to really make the city center as friendly to pedestrians and bikers and to other people who use other mobility options rather than their private cars. In Tirana today, there are more people traveling with a bus than there are people traveling with 200,000 cars. And that is just to say that the priority should really go towards the ones that are not choosing their own private car to move from their place of work to their place of life.
Grad Sarajevo je u mnogome doprinio održivom i čistom transportu u Sarajevu, izgradnjom Trebevićke žičare kao oblika održivog i zelenog transporta. Također, sa kantonom Sarajevo kao partnerom u regionalnom projektu Održiva urbana mobilnost u zemljama jugoistočne Evrope u okviru Njemačke razvojne saradnje usvojen je plan održive urbane mobilnosti kantona Sarajevo i grada Sarajevo, koji je u suštini strateški plan osmišljen da zadovolji potrebe mobilnosti ljudi i privrednih subjekata u Sarajevu i okolini za boljom kvalitetom života.
Glavni grad Podgorice u saradnji sa njemačkom razvojnom agencijom GIZ 2019. godine započeo aktivnosti na izradi plana održive urbane mobilnosti, koji kasnije je usvojen u Skupštini glavnog grada. To je trenutak novog pristupa planiranju saobraćaja u našem gradu, koji kreira sadržaj po mjeri građana, a ne automobila. Podgorica je u međuvremenu postala bogatija za novu mrežu biciklističkih staza, a glavni grad je pokrenuo i projekat subvencioniranja kupovine bicikala za ukupno 1000 građana.
Skopje se priključува на 140 градови во светот кои што го избрале БРТ-то за најисплатлив јавен превоз. Горди сме што Скопје е првиот град на Балканот кој што ќе воведе БРТ систем, што не е успех само на градот, туку е успех на целата наша држава. Ова е голем историски чекор за Скопје, затоа што за прв пат во последниве 40 години правиме ваква голема реформа во јавниот превоз на патници, кој што досега беше организиран преку класичен автобуски превоз.
Pre svega želim da naglasim da je plan održive urbane mobilnosti usvojen u decembru prošle godine. Mnogo značajnih stvari se u gradu Beogradu radi u tom pravcu. Naglašavam pre svega širenje pešačkih zona, zatim sve aktivnosti koje se tiču realizacije projekta metro. Također značajno je ideja i koncept koji želimo da razvijemo u Beogradu, a to je rečni saobraćaj.
We plan, we see, we observe, and then we're able to have a more educated approach towards operators who are running our buses, or rebuilding new streets, or reconceptualizing new places, or turning whole passages into pedestrian-only spaces. There are simple things that we could be doing, such as bike counters, where we are actually measuring how many bikers we have in city and how many of those are added every day.
U narednim godinama u kantonu Sarajevo desit će se velike promjene po pitanju javnog prevoza, a sve u cilju da do 2025. godine blizu 90% putnika, to jest 90% javnog prevoza u kantonu Sarajevo se odvija ekološko prihvatljivim vozilima.
Our city gets the efficient traffic system, approachable and accessible to all citizens, socially just, devoted to the sustainable mobility and protection of both environment and health of our citizens, which results in Podgorica becoming a more pleasant place to live.
Со тоа, Скопје добива брз, безбеден и одржлив јавен транспорт, кој ќе биде доволно атрактивен, што ќе овозможи директно намалување на сообраќајниот метеж, а со тоа индиректно ќе го намали и аерозагадувањето од делот на сообраќајот.
Jasno je da je za razvoj savremenog koncepta urbane mobilnosti važno favorizovati s jedne strane pešačenje, a s druge strane vožnju bicikla. Tako da svi načini koji će učiniti bicikl dostupniji građanima Beograda su važni i na njima radimo.
It was really great to hear so positive messages from Southeast Europe. And it is also even more important to have mayors and decision makers on board that will help for sure that the implementation go much more smoothly. Now I would like to introduce the next part of our today's conference. We know that integrated energy and climate planning is a challenge, but also an opportunity to connect different actors, involve all important stakeholders, and increase efficiency in implementation. It is always good to have a holistic approach in implementation. Cities and municipalities around the world are taking on a great responsibility to this process. They are aware of the fact that the local community is under the pressure from various sides. From one side, there is a legal commitment, obligations at the national and the local level. From the other side, there is a very strong professional and scientific community, and they also want to contribute. Civil society should be part of this process, but also we don't have to forget our citizens. It will be a process, and it will not happen in a short period of time. We have heard in the previous presentation that it always takes time. But once you start, then you will have also a chance to finish. So as early you start, you will have early results. Today with us, we will have also another speaker who will join us online. And I would like on this stage to invite Fabio Tomasi, who is a project development unit manager by the Innovation and Project Institute Area Science Park from Italy. So Fabio, I hope that you can hear us.
Yes, thank you for the introduction and the invitation.
So welcome. I would like to welcome you on today's conference, and I will give the floor to you. Please, you can start your presentation.
Thank you very much. So good morning, everybody. Today I will speak about the harmonization of energy and transport planning, which is a methodology that we have developed in the frame of the Simpla project, which has been funded by the Horizon 2020 Europe program. Could you please share the slides? I don't know if the slides are shared. Yes, I suppose so.
We will manage the slides from studio. Please just tell us the next slide and we will go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see the slide, so I kindly ask you to move to slide 3, where you have a quick view of the partners. Just to underline that we had a partnership which included both technical partners and regional authorities. because regional authorities could indeed support us in transferring the methodology that we have developed to the cities that were not directly involved. Next slide, please. So the objective of the project was to develop methodologies that with the aim of optimize both in terms of quality and of efficiency of the process, the development of both SECAP and SMP. Through a project management process, since most of the work is in the process rather than actions. We didn't develop new actions. There are just actions that are already usually deployed by SAMP and SECAP, but they can be developed in a more interactive way. Because the problem is that usually these plans are developed by different departments that don't communicate very much each other. And the result is that we have a totally independent plan. We stress that the result is having two independent but harmonized plans, because it has been suggested that the SMP could become just a part of the SECAP. But that would not work because the SAMP and the SECAP are different. As you can see in the next slide, there are some significant differences between the two. In the case of SECAP, the objective is the reduction of CO2 emission and also introducing some climate change adaptation. In the SAMP, the objective is more wide, which is improving the quality of life, which doesn't mean only to address climate change, which is, let's say, a side effect, but it really increases accessibility, improving the safety of mobility. And so it's not just about the environment. Moreover, SECAPs can be developed from very small village to metropolis, whereas SMP are developed by larger, medium, or at least medium or even larger cities. And also what is important to underline here is the difference in monitoring. In the case of SECAP, is extremely well defined by the Covenant of Mayor Office with a centralized monitoring system, where in the case of the SMP, this has been demanded entirely decentralized to each single city. Even if the Commission has realized that this generates problem. And a few days ago, I was in Brussels in a workshop, and DG Move said that they are willing, they are proposing to introduce mandatory indicators for mobility. So next slide, please. The harmonization process is again in the middle of SMP SECAP, with the aim of making them working together, improving their effectiveness and having them moving in the same direction. Next slide, please. The key principle is a circular methodology in five stages, the project management approach, the need of a strong leadership leading the process, multidisciplinarity and cooperation is as well as important, the need for a political commitment and a comprehensive vision, the involvement of stakeholders and the data and monitoring. Next slide, please. So as you can see, the five stages are initiation, planning, implementation, monitoring, update, and continuation. But I would prefer to imagine it not in a 2D dimension, but in a 3D dimension as a next slide, because if you just imagine a circle, you just get back to the point. But what I would like is that you not get back to the point you were initially, but that you also move vertically, meaning that there's an improvement. The process starts again, but the situation has improved. Probably you will not meet all the objectives that you have, but then through a revision of what you have done with the help of the indicators, you will know what has worked, what has not worked, you will identify way, and start again the process by improving the action on the basis of the knowledge that you have acquired through the proper monitoring. Next slide, please. So the phase one initiation is extremely important because first of all, there should be a strong commitment, a strong political commitment to have different departments working together, setting up a team with a coordinator. There should be a coordinator that could be external. Sometimes it's more easy for the team to accept the leadership of something external to them than to have one of them selected and chosen as a leader. Next slide, please. And the political commitment is also important because you need a vision, an overarching vision. It's not just about reducing emission by 30-20%. It's how do you want your city by 2030 or by 2050? You have to communicate to your citizens an image of a sustainable cities, of a more livable cities. So, provided this vision, setting up the team, there should be initial assessment of the state of the art, the involvement of any relevant partner or stakeholders to be involved in the process, and the definition of the work plan to achieve the harmonization. Next slide, please. Then the real phase, the harmonization of vision. The vision set up in the SECAP and SMP should be aligned and harmonized with the overarching vision of the city, the one which I just mentioned. Then the actions should be coordinated, and as well as the monitoring plan, and everything should be coordinated through a process of strong cooperation, and then the formal approval of the revised plan. Next slide, please. So the main problem is the monitoring. As we have seen, that's totally different in SECAP and SMP. Our personal suggestion, just to identify quickly, is first to set a common database of data and setting common indicators for both plans, which means also doing the work just once and not twice, and then having deadlines coordinating for the monitoring. Since the SECAP required the submission of the indicators to the Commandant Mayor office every 2 years, also the SMP should have a monitoring steps defined every 2 years at the same time of the SECAP. Next slide, please. And then it's important also to monitor how the harmonization process itself is going on. We provide also self-assessment questionnaire to help it. It's important to have a dialogue with the stakeholder, also to have the feedback and improve. Involve all relevant decision maker in the process, and summarizing all of it in an harmonization report with lessons learned that are the basis for moving vertically, as I suggested when I showed you the spiral. Next slide, please. And we go back again with improving. Next, please. So, then there's also an important thing, which is not just the mitigation actions, but the SECAP include also climate change adaptation measure. This is a point that, to my personal understanding, has not been explored so far widely. I think that is important to address more carefully. Possible actions could be, since one of the main problems is flooding, for example, developing and installing alert system for flooding with sensor closing automatically underways connected to Infomobility app in order to provide information. The picture that you see in the slides is quite is getting common and common. So if your city is particularly at risk on this, you should probably think about introducing this system, as well as thinking about permeabilization of roads and parking in order to absorb more water when there are heavy rains. Another problem in the south of Europe are heat wave, extreme heat during the summer, which is also, by the way, preventing many people from riding a bike. These require some actions, as thinking about, for example, shading the bike lanes, water fountains along the way, as well as also the shading possibly with trees of streets and parking to reduce the heat wave effect. This is a point that we are exploring with a new project, and so if you are interested to know more, please email me, and as we have produced something, I could share. Next slide, please. Lessons learned. So, in the frame of the Simple project, we have developed these methodological guidelines, which you can download. These are a reference, a theoretical math reference, a methodological, which guide you. But the situation in the field could be different. So, for example, we have decided to imagine that you start from scratches, that you don't have neither a SECAP and a SMP, and you have to develop them in parallel. That probably could not be the case. We involved several pilot cities in the process during the project from 5 countries, and there were some cities that have SMP and the SECAP that have just been developed, and they said, why should I modify one of the plans that has, with a lot of effort, just been developed, involving stakeholders and so on. In that case, it makes sense that you keep one of the plan as fixed and you work on the other. But you could find that perhaps some changes could be required. What is important, the key principles that I would suggest not to abide from is setting a common vision. Because if you don't have a common vision, you will never achieve the Green Deal objectives. The setting up of a joint harmonization team, because the point is having the departments working together in the same direction. The creation of a joint database for a proper monitoring and not doing the work of collecting data twice. Collecting reliable data requires a lot of effort and money to do it, so it's important to make the process more efficient. And then, based on this monitoring, a continuous upgrade of the actions with feedback among the two plans and the team. Next slide. So, finally, available resources for you. There's the official guidelines, which has been included as an annex to the SMP guidelines on LTs. On our website, you will find translation in several languages and many other resources that are available for you. So in the next slide, you can find my contact details if you want to learn more. And so thank you for your attention. Don't hesitate to contact me.
Thank you very much, Fabio. The presentation was really interesting, and it was a really great introduction in our panel session. Since we will have a few minutes left, I would like to ask if we have any immediate question for Fabio now, here in studio or online. Yes, please. We have a question here in studio. If you can organize a micro, it would be great. In the meantime, I would like to inform you that all presentations, including this one we just heard from Fabio, will be uploaded. So all presentations will be available for you. So you don't need to make pictures, as I see you do. The question is, please, you have a question? She's coming. Okay, thank you.
Ilirek Muslio, Pristina Municipality. Thank you for the presentation. Really, it was a great presentation and highly structured presentation. As a Pristina Municipality, so far we have worked on the mobility plan, but SECAP is something new now for us. So I'm asking you about the experience directly, your concrete experience that you have in harmonizing this project, because it looks that these two projects is very connected with each other. So I want to ask you about your direct experience and also with the focus on the challenges that you have. Thank you.
Thank you for a question. I will invite Fabio to answer. Even I can imagine that for the answer we will need much more time than we have. So please, Fabio, go ahead. We have 2.5 minutes.
So thank you for the question. Yeah, my personal understanding is that one is just the case that you have one plan that's being just developed, so you can keep that fixed. When you will start develop SECAPs, transport and mobility is one of the key points, since transport is responsible for much of the emissions. So you will find that for developing that part of the SECAP, it would be extremely paramount to build up an harmonization team. So making those working on the SECAP working together with the team working on the mobility, share the data, and providing also the experience for defining the action and the proper indicator for the mobility actions. By the way, the other feedback could be that those that are more expert with CO2 emissions could provide some useful feedback to the mobility team to develop specific indicators related to CO2 emission related to transport, since these are not necessarily main indicators when you develop a mobility plan. So.
Thank you very much. Fabio, I invite you to stay with us until end of the panel. I can imagine that we will have, again, some questions for you. Now we will proceed with the agenda and go ahead with our panel discussion. We have heard that strategic planning and aligning the different plans and synchronizing of the processes is a challenge. But we also know that it shouldn't be an obstacle for all those cities and municipalities that would be or would like to be ambitious, would like to go and be progressive in their countries or even broader. And that's why we are all together here to hear and to discuss how to face and how to challenge this, how to go ahead with the SECAP development and not to destroy other processes, or opposite, how to go with the development of sumps and not to destroy any other process. So for today's panel discussion, I would like to invite our panelists, and as you know, the whole session is organized as a hybrid event. So we will have a few of our panelists here in studio, concretely 3, and 3 additional will join us online. So it is my really great honor to welcome here in studio in Berlin, Mrs. Anuela Ristani, Deputy Mayor from Municipality of Tirana, Albania. Thank you for coming. With us is also here Mira Radenović, member of the City Council, City of Novi Sad from Serbia. Welcome, Mira. And also Professor Dr. Ayşen Erdincler, Director of the Environmental Protection Department, Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality from Turkey. Welcome.
Thank you.
Online with us, we have Maia, Head of Climate Change Division, Ministry of Environmental Protection and Agriculture from Georgia. Do we have Maia?
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, thank you and welcome. Also, we have Sylwia Slomiak from Foundation Forum Energii from Poland.
Hello,
Sylwia, can we hear you? Yes. So welcome to you also. And also Fabio will stay with us as announced at the beginning. Thank you all for being with us. I would like also to say that the whole panel discussion will be led by my colleague Dukajin and myself. We have prepared several questions for all of you, but we also would like to invite our public and audience here from Berlin to join us and to ask the question, to use really this opportunity, but also to invite all online participants to take the floor and ask the question and use this opportunity. So I will give the floor to my colleague Dukajin.
Okay, thank you.
Start.
Yeah, thank you, Dubravka. Anuela, welcome. Good to have you with us. I have a question for you. Basically from your role as a deputy mayor, and related to the video we just seen. We understand that the Tirana municipality has started urban mobility measures a bit before the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan was developed. And also, you have received the first European prize for the urban public space reconstruction of Skanderberg Square. Amazing work. What inspired the team behind in Tirana to start thinking, implementing, planning the city using the urban mobility perspective?
Thank you so much, Dukajin. Thank you for having me here. It's such a pleasure. Before you even ask, this is my transportation uniform, because it was the same one I had in the video. But I have 2 news for you. The first one is the bad news, and the second is the good news. The bad news is that I'm not a transportation expert. The good news is that I'm not a transportation expert. So that said, when you talk about mobility, my expertise and that of the team mainly is that of livability more than transportation. And so when we're talking about mobility, we're basically talking about how we're improving people's lives. And by improving people's lives, sometimes mayors get into this trap of they enter the office thinking they're architects, and they leave the office thinking they're traffic controllers. And that is the wrong approach to it, because it basically takes you from this generalized view of looking at the city and how you manage it to this more silo effect, where we come to think that traffic congestion is the main hurdle, where people complaining about being late to work is the main hurdle. All of these things are, in fact, problems that even Pablo was mentioning, that we sometimes dissect, and rightfully so, from the whole holistic approach of managing the city. So our inspiration was exactly that. When you're thinking about the ideal day you spend here in Berlin, you're probably not thinking of how you got from A to B. You're probably thinking of the experience you had in the proximity of the places you visited. And this is a huge city, for example, but still people live in their small neighborhoods and they enjoy that because everything is there. The fact that you can get your kids to school without having to commute for several hours, that's livability. That's really building a livable city. The fact that you have your bar, your services, your restaurants, your grocery store nearby, that is quality of life. So when we're thinking about transportation, we're sometimes thinking about the artificial problems that we've created to our societies. But when we're thinking about sustainability as an urban approach, not necessarily as a mobility approach, then we are thinking of, so how do we develop a city that is livable? How do we develop a city where transportation being a problem is minimized? We will keep talking about all the most efficient ways of transport and how we pollute less and how we make them more efficient and how we make them more compatible with our living today. But it's still transport. How about we remove this focus from transport and we shift it to living better? And by living better, all of us used to have this little drawings when we were little, explaining the city and the terminology of, what it means to live in a city when we were 5, when we were 6. And the elements of that picture are trees, houses, schools, services, parks, and nobody really focuses on, the high-speed train, or the rail, or the highway, because all of those are just means to us living within these perks that living in the city, living in the urban space really is about. So the reason why we started early was because we really started from scratch. We started to build the Tirana urban development plan before we have anything else. We came from a context of a city that had only 200,000 citizens to a city that almost overnight grew 5 times that. And so the city developed almost organically by itself, didn't necessarily have a proper planning, so we had to start from that planning. And when we started from the planning, the thinking was, so what do we want to do? Do we want to have this sprawl of people living everywhere, of commuting to work for hours and hours and hours, and then to school? And do we want to have a financial district, and then a commercial district, and then a residential district? No. What we want to have is to condense everything in a livable space where you can go downstairs and have your playground for your kids, and then you can go grocery shopping, and then you can have wine with your friends in the dinner. And so all of these things are done when you think about how we're developing the city that is livable. And what Pablo was saying, we're talking about climate change, we're also dissecting that. We're thinking of how we mitigate the risk of climate change by our transportation, but at the same time, we have to acknowledge on what will just practically not be possible after a while, after 5 years, after 10 years. Certain things are not able to happen anymore. They're not sustainable, they're not possible, they're not something that we can hold on to. And so those two directions, if you condense everything in one, is how you picture the future of your city. And does it have traffic as your main criteria for developing your work, or does it have quality of life as your main criteria of developing our work? And I think that's where we came from, and that's what developed all of our work today.
Excellent. Thanks, Anuela. I mean, a people-centered solution. Thanks for bringing that up. Dubravka?
Yes, thank you. I propose that we move from Tirana to Novi Sad. We know that Novi Sad is the second largest city in Serbia. We also know that there are some smart cities and there are some smart solutions, and it is always difficult to somehow connect these high-tech modern technologies and needs and concerns that you have about environment and so on. Knowing your background and knowing that you are experienced, I would like to hear from you, where is now Novi Sad in terms of smart solutions? Are there any plans? What are the activities that are ongoing now?
Yeah, thank you for your question, and thank you for opportunity for Novi Sad to be here and to exchange our experience with other regions and other cities. So thank you, GIZ, for organizing all this. So as the answer to your question is not really easy, because we all in Serbia, and I think all in our Southeast Europe region, have more or less similar problems. As for Novi Sad, we have population about 500,000 people now. So we are second largest city in Serbia, but when we look a little bit in the past, only 20 years, in the past, Novi Sad had 250,000 people. So we doubled, in 20 years, we doubled our population. So we did convinced ourselves that we are going to have big issues about mobility, about climate changes, because all of the people, all of the all the mobility, all the cars. When you live in the city, you have necessary things that you need to do. So you need to go to the school, you need to go to the kindergarten, you need to go to work. So we didn't have time to adjust, because in 20 years. That's so small, so tiny a little time for those amount of people that come and have born in city. So what we did, first of all, yesterday we had heard that we need to adjust, we need to build infrastructure, we need to build roads, railways, we need to do something about the infrastructure. So we did. We build new boulevards, we build new bridges, because Novi Sad is the city with the two banks of the Danube River. So we needed to connect those people. We built bridges. Also, we finished a couple of months ago a new railway from the Belgrade to the city of Novi Sad. It's all electric railway, so it's really helping us for communicating and for communicating between these two cities. Also, we build cycling roads, or lines. We have in Novi Sad now 150 kilometers of cycling roads, so it's quite a lot. And people in Novi Sad do like to cycle. But even when those changes happen, you need to change the mindset of the people, not with the restrictions, because we saw that restrictions are bad. People don't want to be restricted or to be punished because they need to come to the city center, or they need to go to the school and they have a limited time to park their car in the city center. So what we need to do is to adjust and to have mindset. Not really a good time for us in 2 years ahead of us because of the corona, but corona did something what we didn't expect. People changed their mindset. People saw that they need to use more bicycles. They need to use more electric vehicles. They need to walk often because there's a need. There's a human need. There's a need to connect with the nature, and Corona really actually helped us to change smoothly people's mindset. And nowadays, people in Novi Sad are very eager to actually use the infrastructure that we did and built in Novi Sad. Also, what we did, we listened to NGOs, and we collaborate a lot with the civil sector. They had an idea to create a measure in the city budget to, I think Podgorica said that they did the same. So we paid half amount of a price of one bicycle to every citizen who wants to buy it. It's about €100, a subvention. That's happened 2 years ago. We had three times this measure, and nowadays we have 3,000 new bicycles cycling around the city. So what that actually did to environmental issues. That's not the measures that are lost or how to say without benefits. We had benefits even with air quality, which a colleague from Berlin said. So we saw at the last report that the health agency from Serbia gave us that Novi Sad is the only city in the Serbia that actually decreased the pollution in the air. So that actually is the quality of all those measures that we did.
Thank you very much, Mira. It was very inspiring to hear that even you face this with a growing population, that you find some solutions and some measures that are really useful and produce some positive impacts. So, Tukajin.
Okay, thanks.
You're impatient to ask.
Yeah, I have a question for Professor Ayşen. Professor Ayşen, it's been a pleasure these last couple of days to speak to you on various subjects. But for this occasion, I wanted to know, we understand that Istanbul is committed to carbon neutrality by 2050. And we understand that's a very complex measure that requires a lot of mobilization of human and financial resources and different sectors. Out of this whole picture, how do you see the sustainable mobility component contributing towards that?
Well, this is very correct. First of all, thank you for reminding me here. This is a great pleasure, as you know. Well, as you said, Istanbul is a huge city. And when we, everything actually has been started with this signing the deadline 2020 by our mayor, Mr. Ekrem İmamoğlu. And he committed that Istanbul is going to be carbon neutral and the resilient city by 2050. But this is not that easy, obviously, so we do have a very, very ambitious target. And if we look at the baseline year, which is 2019, we have seen that transportation is the second big sector affecting the global warming, or the climate change. And their contribution, stationary energy is about 63%, transportation is about 28%, and the waste, including both solid waste, water, and wastewater, is just 9%. Well, as you can see from this result, it is inevitable to find some solutions for the sustainable mobility. This is for us. That's the reason we have prepared our sustainable urban mobility plan. It has been started in 2019, and it has been completed in March of this year. So it's a very human-centered, it has a very human-centered approach. It's a good one. It definitely aims to increase the life quality of the citizens, definitely, and reduce the use of private cars and pushing people to use more environmentally friendly transportation methods like public transportation, cycling, walking, such kind of things. So this is one of the best things. And another very important thing, increase the accessibility for everybody. This is very important. So everything is going in this way. I do believe that this is very important in terms of transportation because it has a huge, almost 1/3 contribution to the total greenhouse gases in Istanbul.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. One thing is for sure, there's a lot of smaller cities that have eyes towards the Istanbul as a mega city. Yes. In your work towards that achievement. So for your own sake and for ours as well, you need to be successful in that task.
Sure. I mean, it's going to be real tough because we are serving more than 20 million. It's like a country, but we are pioneering for the other cities in Turkey. This is very good, If you do something good, then everybody tries to imitate it, and this is the most important thing, I do believe. So, yes, there's too much to do.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, thank you. It was really inspiring to hear the experiences from cities from the region. I would like to invite Maia to share with us experiences from other sides. You are coming from ministry and from another region. In Georgia, you have maybe another challenges. I would like to ask you, how do you manage all this action related climate protection and energy transport, and how do you see this cooperation, national level, local level, and how do you do it in practice?
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if you can see me, but I hope at least you can hear me.
We can hear you very well. Very well.
Great, thank you. But I also heard myself like twice. It's a bit weird, but I will try to respond to your question as well. As you mentioned, I'm coming from the national government, so from the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Agriculture, and we mostly deal with the national climate change policy. However, only national policies cannot do much if it's not integrated and if it's not really reflecting the all needs, including the cities and the municipalities as well. Especially the role of the cities and the municipalities in the climate change policy recently are just more and more increasing. And not only the role are increasing, but also we all see that the mitigation potential that are in the cities are really important for us. And if we want to achieve our national targets, it's very important also to integrate all the stakeholders and processes. Additionally, we'll observe and we see that the cities are more and more increasing their vulnerability. I mean, cities' vulnerability are increasing more and more as the time passes. Therefore, the proper climate policies and climate actions are very important also at the city and at the municipality level. Georgia recognized the essential role of the municipalities in the achievement of the NDC, and it also highlighted in the nationally determined contribution of us that the cities would play very important role for us in achieving those our national targets. Additionally, when we developed NDC, we have tried to integrate the municipal commitments and the activities and the measures as well. For the implementation of the NDC, we also have developed the climate strategy and action plan, which is until 2030, which also accompanies the 2021-2023 climate action plan, which has very concrete and very specific measures in each of the economic sectors. And the NDC and the climate strategy and action plan, they cover the 7 sectors, which are the transport, industry, buildings, waste, forestry, agriculture. And I should note that quite many of the activities and the measures that we have in the climate strategy and the action plan actually are the ones from the cities and from the municipalities. So we are kind of co-implementing a number of measures together. Currently, very important process that also in Georgia is happening is the Covenant of Mayors. We have 24 signatories of the Covenant of Mayors who are developing the policies, like climate and energy policies and so on. And also in order for us to ensure the alignment of the information and of the data, we have developed a software tool where the members of the Covenant of Mayors and the municipalities are able not only to develop their backups, but also to align their reporting systems with the national inventory systems as well. So we will have we are having actually one common software that that will integrate the municipal and the city level planning and the city level reporting to the national level reporting. So it's very important for us in that terms. Additionally, for that purposes, we have adopted the technical regulation on the modalities, procedures, and the guidelines for the cities, the ways how to report their GHG emissions at city level. And additional elements that we kind of try to have at the high level and to integrate and to hear the cities at the national level is that in 2020 we have created the Climate Change Council, which is the high-level council under the government of Georgia, which consists from the ministers of finance, economy, environment, education, science, and so on. And the chair of the Covenant of Mayors group also has the seat in the Climate Change Council, which means that we have permanent exchange of the information. The needs of the cities are being heard at the council level, at the state level. So it's very kind of one of the important milestones that we managed to bring when it comes to the cooperation. And so far, we are quite successfully coordinating with the municipalities and with the cities and aligning our policies and also needs with each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Maia. It was very nice to hear experiences from Georgia and to hear that you are very much aware that cities can contribute and that cities can do a lot, but from the other side, thank you again for mentioning NDCs. Somehow we need really to be aware that there are a lot of happening at the national level where the cities should also take part. So.
Okay, we have the next question. Actually, I have. It's for Sylwia. Sylwia, can you hear us well? Yes, very well. Excellent. Sylwia, the next question is related to funding. It's one of the top, most interested subjects I have. So I understand you have a long-term experience with implementation, supporting municipalities or cities across Europe on development and implementation of different financial instruments in the field of sustainable energy and mobility projects. So the question is, what would be your recommendations to municipalities which are committed to taking action but face these issues?
Yes, thanks very much. Exactly. We talked about planning and we talked about strategies, and then local authorities are asking where to get the money from. And there will never be enough subsidies. So my recommendation is to start reducing dependence on subsidies. And there are many options. There are many innovative financing instruments. We call them really innovative, not because they are completely not known. It's just that they are still not used very often, such as cooperation with ESCOs, so energy performance contracting, which in my view is an excellent alternative to subsidies, because as some of you might know, in this case, local authorities, cities, municipalities, they do not need to get any capital up front. They do not need subsidies. They do not need to mobilize their own budget. They need to create a partnership with a private actor called an ESCO, and it is the ESCO who brings the money. And it's not only about the money, it's also about transferring the risk, the quality of works, the result, the risk of not meeting the results onto the private partner, which really protects the public money very well, because local authorities would pay the ESCO only if the results of the project are satisfactory. So the ESCO really wants and needs to make sure that the local authorities are happy with the results. Why is that? Because the ESCOs usually need to take a loan from the bank and they need to pay it back. So they need the local authorities to pay them in order to be able to pay it back, which is a very good motivation. And it simplifies the process, the whole project on the side of local authorities. But there are also other options. There is an option to launch green bonds, for example, or revolving funds, or interacting, or also to work with citizens, which is called citizen financing, and that can be crowdfunding, that can be energy communities. So there are really a lot of options that many local authorities, especially the smaller ones, often don't know about. What's also very important is to start planning projects proactively, not waiting for appropriate calls for proposals and subsidies, because then you lose time. It often happens that local authorities wait for a subsidy call, and only then do they start planning a project, because they know that there is a potential to get money for a certain project. That means they have limited time to prepare a good project, and then the quality might need to be quite reduced. There are always trade-offs if you are rushing because of the deadline of the call. So to be proactive, to invest your own budget into planning a project. What's very interesting and still available now is support for local authorities all across Europe. It's called European City Facility, and cities can get grants of 60,000 euros. It's a lump sum for preparing investment concept. When they are only at a very early stage of a vision, they know in which direction they want to go, in an ambitious direction, like you mentioned before, thinking about the future of the cities and how the city should change, having this vision, but not having invested much resources yet into planning this project. So you can apply for this grant, which will help you prepare an investment concept. And then with this investment concept, you can start approaching investors, not only local ones, but also going on the international level. You can be linked with representatives of investment banks or investment funds. You can see what's out there and what kind of conditions you could get. And then, only then, can you really assess what would be the advantages of sticking with subsidies and what would be the advantages of working with the private sector. So it's really a good moment to start thinking about it. There is a call coming up in late May, June. So if you are interested, you can still try to get this grant, which is of very low risk. So this is my main recommendation. Stop thinking about subsidies as this kind of free money coming from the regional or the EU level, and being, let's say, easy money to get and also kind of a low risk to the local budget. This is not true. It's public money, so it comes from our taxes, whether it's national or whether it's EU funds, it all comes from residents' taxes. If there are alternatives, such as working with an ESCO, you could then think about shifting part of your municipal budget into some areas for which there are no options, for which you would not be able to work with private investors, for which maybe there are no subsidies. And suddenly you might find a smaller or bigger pool of money that you could invest in some areas that have been neglected at this stage. So this is very important. And learn from others, because even if in your country some of those innovative financing schemes are not yet well known, or the policy incentives for those might not be as attractive as in other member states, you can still learn, get an overview, and prepare to when the situation changes in your countries as well. And there are many projects. There are many projects such as Prospect Plus, for example, financed from Horizon, then 2020, now Horizon Europe funds, which is free for cities to participate in, exchange experiences, go abroad, see the project, and really learn about the practicalities that you can later copy.
Thank you, Sylwia. That's a range of instruments available. From working with people, citizens, crowdfunding, private sector, ESCOs, and everything else that you mentioned. And there's quite a lot of information you unpacked there, which needs to be followed up to be elaborated. But yeah, thanks nonetheless.
Yes, thank you all very much for your valuable answers. But I would like to ask our audience to give them a chance to ask the questions. Not only we do this. Also, I would like to invite all online participants to ask the question, to send us the message. And yes, we have a question here in studio.
Thank you very much. It was a huge pleasure to listen to you. And I have a question for Professor Ayşen. Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality indeed is big example can be for many municipalities. And I am happy to announce that Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality preparing sustainable energy climate action plan by covenant of mayor's requirements. It is a huge step and could be excellent example for many Turkish municipalities. And I would like to ask today, we are more concentrated on transportation topic, but by CCAP approach, I see four main keystones like sustainable transport, sustainable energy, building, and waste management. And my question will be related about waste management. Maybe Professor Ayşen can share some good experiences, examples, what Istanbul municipality planning to do, maybe best experiences that you can share for others. Thank you.
Thank you very much. if I would like to tell about the waste management part, this is very important in terms of the Istanbul Climate Change Action Plan. Well, as I mentioned before, we are serving more than 20 million people. So again, I would say that every day we are collecting 18,000 tons of solid waste from Istanbul. So it's a huge number, obviously. And waste is a very important sector in climate change. As I mentioned before, its contribution to the greenhouse gases is around, for Istanbul, it's 10%. So what we are doing, definitely we have prepared our waste management action plan in accordance with the climate change action plan. And actually, climate change action plan is like an umbrella, you know, it covers everything. So the good thing about them is they are all serving for the same target. You know, this means that when you deal with your waste, you have to check for the energy production. Well, for example, our target is like by 2050, we're not gonna burn or incinerate or landfill more than 30% of solid wastes. So the target is 70% should be recovered. You know, this is very important. Recovery of energy is one of the most important things. And at the meantime, what we do is, yes, we do energy recovery from our waste. We do have incineration unit, which has been started to be operated very newly, you know. While it has capacity of 3,000 per day, we are producing 78 megawatts hour energy. And on the other hand, we do have biomethanization units. Again, we are producing 1.4 megawatt hour energy from that one. We are getting, recovering many energy from the biomass, in other words. So these are the plans. But I would like to say that luckily we have just completed our waste management plan, definitely in accordance with the both, CAP and even the CCAP, because CCAP is also energy-related project and plan, and waste management definitely talks about the energy recovery. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ayşen. I have received few questions from the chat, and one is for Anuela and one is for Mira. So I'll start with Anuela then. The question is like this. What support do you get from the national government to implement better mobility in cities? What would you need to do more? Is it only about the funding, or is there also other support that's required to the cities?
So Tirana is the capital of Albania, and because we are a small country but a big city, we actually make more money than the government gives us back. So financing, in terms of direct financing is not an option. But what is an option is projects that are massive, that you only do once in a lifetime. Those are projects that require outside financing anyways. So, you know, when IFIs are involved, or when, you know, other foreign assistance is involved, obviously that has to go through central government. However, what we've been doing, even before COVID, even before all of us were concentrated, even before energy prices went up, what we've been doing is from day one, we've started to do those changes which we could do as management, as local administration. So in addition to our urban mobility plan, a byproduct of that, for example, is the Green City Action Plan. And you have around the world today roughly 170 cities who have a Green City Action Plan. But because our Green City Action Plan is one of the most famous, is not because we're the first or we're the best, but it's the only plan that actually highlights what you can do locally within your administration. Because we all know how much of a hurdle it is to get approval from central government, obviously, because central governments don't exist just for, you know, local administration. That's your job. But by using central government as an excuse sometimes, I feel that, aiming at doing big things but failing at doing small things is not something that should stop you, or any city for that matter, despite the size, despite the place, despite the country. And so that has been driving us more than anything else. We've started to do things that we could do. And I'll give you an example. Removing parking spaces from the streets is in the central area of the city. You don't need central approval for that. Building bike lanes and clearing out those parking spaces, instead putting bike lanes, you don't need central government approval for that. And that's really not a lot of money either, so you don't even need the funding for that. I don't know, cleaning out these spaces where people would park cars and instead turning them into green areas or small playgrounds. No money for that and no government approval. So all of these things, unsurprisingly, are things that really do matter to people. And you cannot go out there and say, oh, well, I'm waiting for a government approval, and then there's a law going on parking spaces. Nobody cares. At the end of the day, the bucket stops with you, and that's what people want, for you to deliver things. So every time people ask, oh, so where's the central government in this? And my answer would be, I prefer it not to be, but if it is, we sit with them, and of course, we never stop until we get our way out, if it's possible. But obviously, in a situation like us, when we went through a major earthquake and major rebuilding effort, which requires millions and millions and millions of investment, I'm not going to knock on the Prime Minister's door or whoever minister and ask them, could you please concentrate right now on, having a new bus for us? Because that's never going to happen. Governments have approval, have priorities, and they have plans, and they have budgets, and obviously we vote them for that. Our job is to do everything that we could possibly do locally, and then go to them for additional help.
Excellent. Thanks. Thank you for your answer. Can I ask Mira next? Mira, Novi Sad has its own agency, Energy, responsible for strategic planning and development, and has developed, as you mentioned briefly, SUMP and Smart Plan 2, second phase. Now that you're starting with SECAP development, can you share with us how do you integrate all these and other related plans? And how do you resolve the challenges that you face during the implementation process, more importantly? So what solutions do you have for the development of sustainable urban mobility in the framework of climate action?
Thank you for your question, and for the actions, what we are doing here. We need to be careful. That's first that we saw in this last year and the year that we are living today. Why? Because the action, what we are doing, comes with the reaction, and it comes with the price. And what's actually is the meaning of all this? So we are now in the phase of creating a SECAP, and we need to do that carefully. What we did in the near past, we create. Actually, we buy some electric buses, 10 electric buses for the Novi Sad utility company, which deal with the transport, public transport, and also we buy 100 buses on the natural gas. So we decrease the conjunction and air pollution, but in this crisis, Ukrainian crisis, we had increase of the value of the gas. And what we did, our utility company came into the problems, so with the finance. So we really need to be very careful what we are doing, because all of these changes, mobility, transition changes, also climate changes, and every action that we are doing to minimize the changes and to nature, we also need to be aware that we can't stop the progress, we can't stop the businesses, we can't stop the living in the cities. So what we are now going to do with the SECAP, we are going to plan transition time and transition way how to get the energy. So okay, we will go to the cleaner energy, we will go to the smoother transition, we will go to the rental system of micro-mobility as a cycling and everything else. But how are we going to do? We need to focus how to get more clean energy, how to produce more clean energy, and how to be cheaper in that way. Because I think everything with the goals, with the 2030 and 2050, it's very, how to say, ambitious. But we need still to live in the reality, and we need to go step by step and to first form the ways how we're going to get more power from renewable sources, and then how to implement new solutions for the mobility and for the businesses in those terms.
Thank you. Yeah. Can we move to...
Okay, then yes, we go ahead, and I would like to ask Professor Ayşen something about cross-sector coordination. But before, I would like to tell you that you have a really great jacket.
Oh.
Okay, yes, we have heard that Istanbul is challenging with a lot of things, but when we make a parallel between such a big city and other cities in the region of Southeast Europe, we can always find some common topics, something that you are a big city, you face in the same way like some smaller city. I would like to hear from you, have you experienced this cross-sectoral coordination? We know that we have to involve in this planning and everything different sectors, and sometimes it is really not easy job. So from your experience, can you share with us how do you do this in Istanbul?
Yes, it is, as you said, it's a very difficult job, a challenge, basically. So what we have done, I guess, the very good thing was during the preparation of our sustainable urban mobility plan, we had a big, stakeholder group. We made sure that, all of the stakeholders will be in the preparation part. So they analyzed all the problems together, all the solutions. Again, by using all of these data, we have developed the strategies all together. So it was a great, difficult job. And again, what is important over here is most of the conversation in between these, different departments. If you think that IMM is a huge municipality having more than 29 different departments in it, so the coordination of these departments was also very, very difficult. So that's the reason, in order to overcome such difficulties, we have established a technical team. This team served both in terms of technical, supervisorship and also the coordination kind of stuff. So it worked very well. And also we have, performed a lot of, workshops or capacity building trainings, etc., to increase the knowledge of the whole group. So the share was has a big importance to me in between the different sectors and the different departments. That was very important. Another very important stuff I do believe that we should mention about it, the SECAP. SECAP will definitely serve for all of these things also. So that's the reason I would like to say that the best thing maybe we are doing right now is the preparation of our SECAP. This is very, very important. If we can complete that one also, we would be having a revised CAP for the new targets and our sustainable mobility, urban mobility plan and the SECAP. So we will be ready to run to the target. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for mentioning SECAP again as an instrument to achieve a lot of our targets we set in front of us. Thank you very much, and go back to Dukicin.
Yeah, thanks. I have the next question for Maia. Do we have Maia online? Yes. Maia, hi. I have a question set here for you. So what are the messages that you can share with cities and municipalities in our region to help them connect with the central level? So basically, how to ensure that their voices and actions are taken into account when the decisions are making. This is the relation between this local and the national central level.
Thank you for this question. Indeed, it's a very important question. I hope you can hear me, right?
Yes, absolutely. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. I'll be very brief, and my key recommendations would be active, engage, and collaborate. Because one of the most important things in terms of being heard is to be active. And we had this kind of experience in Georgia, for example. Our best case is Batumi city, which is kind of champion in the green policies. And this is purely because of their will to be engaged, because of their activeness. And also, when you are active, it also creates additional opportunities. We often had the discussions with the Batumi city, and they always mentioned that as soon as they started to shape their policies into green, a lot of initiatives, a lot of opportunities have arisen for them. So this is, I would say this is one of the most important parts. In terms of the engagement, I would highlight the importance that, I mean, there is the one issue to cooperate with the national government, but we all should start from ourselves, from the local level. So, for example, the mainstreaming the climate changes into their local policies, to have the clear vision that what are your needs, where you want to go, and so how you think we can go there, also would increase this kind of cooperation, or not to increase, but we will stretch this cooperation more. And in terms of the collaboration as well, though your question is more about the national and municipal collaboration, but we see it's broader than only the national government and the local government. And one of the recommendations here would also be to work with to try to collaborate with the national government, of course, but also to engage the stakeholders on the ground, because often the needs that the national government would like to see come from the local stakeholders, from the ones that are on the ground. So in order to really have a holistic view about the needs, it's very important to engage as much stakeholders as possible, starting from the local populations or the local organizations, which can somehow reflect the national government policy, and then of course which will go to the local policy, and then which will go to the national policy. So I think these three issues would be the most important from my perspective, at least from my experience. So be active, engage, and collaborate.
Thank you very much, Maia, for recommending us to invite important stakeholders. And with the same question, or more or less the same question, I would like to go to Poland to ask Sylwia, how do you coordinate with other stakeholders? I know that in this multi-stakeholder project, it is not always an easy task. How do you solve this?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's not always an easy task, but it's definitely very interesting and rewarding, because the more stakeholders, the more varied approach to work, the more interesting, and you can learn quite a lot from it. But yes, it's very important to remember that the different types of organizations have different working styles and different decision-making processes, different approach to risk. That there are certain practical issues that you have to expect when you work with the central government, with ministries, with local authorities who are also limited in terms of their decision-making procedures. It can take time. At the same time, both non-governmental organizations need to understand their partners at the national level and at the local level to avoid frustration, because I have seen quite a lot of frustration coming from just the lack of understanding the reality of work at the certain levels or certain types of organizations. The same, of course, it's true when cities start working with the private sector. Financiers, funding partners have also their rules and different approaches to work, and there needs to be a balance. You need to try to meet somewhere in the middle. You cannot expect that the other part will adapt to you. You need to understand that in order for the cooperation to be really effective, you need to meet somewhere in the middle. Of course, it's even more interesting when we're thinking about international projects where we bring together stakeholders from the different national, local levels, NGOs, but not only within one country, but from many different countries. And then it's very important to look at the local context, at the local regulations, policy incentives that are possible or not, working practices, even the practical side, on the salaries within those organizations. That also impacts the approach of people you work with. So not to prolong this too much, because I think it's a very straightforward answer. Understand your needs, understand why you're doing this project, why you need those particular partners, and then understand how they work so you can really work together effectively.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was really interesting to hear your experience. And I'm sure that all the experience we have heard so far will help us to understand much better our processes. So we also have a question to Fabio.
Yes, Fabio, hi. Pleasure to connect online. And thank you for sticking with us. You shared your introductory presentation with concrete guidelines and comparison alignment size it done between SOM and SECAP. So looking ahead and of course, based on what you just heard from other panelists and challenges raised, what would be the next concrete step to further integrate these two documents? Do you have some examples from some of Italian cities that have done so in the past? Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Yeah, indeed, I think there are several challenges in the future. As I said, we need to explore more the interactions between mobility and climate change adaptation, and to work further on integrating SECAP SAMP under an overall vision. And I will start with the first example that I would quote from Italy, which is Padua, the city of Padua. They work on integrating all the plans the city has developed, not just the SECAP and the SMP, but also the civil protection plan, the air quality plan, and so on. There's an overall vision, and there's a strong commitment at coordinating all actions together towards a single objectives. And all the city departments feel involved in achieving this objective. And this is very important. The other example that I would quote is Parma. The city of Parma was supported directly by us during the Simpra project. They had already SMP, SECAP, and were finalizing the SMP that was coordinating. The main effort and benefit that they got was on the harmonization of the monetary plan, of the set of indicators, on the collection of indicators. And what's interesting is again the vision, because they have developed also the so-called Parma Futuro Smart, which means Parma Smart Future, which set a vision for 2050 and an action plan for 2030, actively involving all stakeholders, economic operators, or civil societies, citizens. It's important to get them involved on board to make them contribute with actions. They can have excellent idea. They can invest, as Sylwia said, the involvement, the involvement of private investor, public-private partnership can help in making investment on doing action. And it is important to communicate properly to citizens. The risk is that we use technical jargon, which will not prove sample second, but it's just for us, for the expert, the professional. And there's also the paradox of CO2 emissions and the mitigation action as with whatever action preventing a risk. If we are successful, if we are able to reduce the CO2 emission as our target, the problem is nothing happens. So it could not be just CO2 emission reduction. Is, as the speaker before me said, is improving the livability, the quality of life. Because indeed, when we promote sustainable mobility, active mobility, we improve the quality of life. People initially is afraid. People is afraid of change. Don't think usually out of the box. But then, when they experience active mobility, the possibility of moving safely in a city with a bike, they will find that it's much more convenient than driving in a traffic jam road by car. It's much more good for their health. They will feel better, and also they will find that they move faster. So you should be brave, plan well, and plan for improving the quality of life of citizens.
Thank you, Fabio. Thanks a lot for those encouraging words. Now we have a session on...
Yes, but before this, I would like really to have a quick question or to ask a quick question, Fabio. All the time I was watching your presentation and I was wondering, okay, when we talk about the processes, then we recognize there are some phases, there are vertical and horizontal processes. But how we can recognize that we are in a, so, like you called it, a spiral process? How we can recognize and how we can manage this? But very short, if you can.
Well, it's all on the quality of the monitoring. If you set clear goals and indicators and you collect them, then you will find if you are achieving the actions. And the indicators should be linked specifically to a single action, so you know which one are working and which one are not one, and involve the stakeholders in the revision process. They will certainly help you because they have a vision of how the situation is going around in the city.
Thank you very much. Yes, and now again time for questions from our audience. If you will have any question here, or do we have it online?
I have one question online. It's addressed to Mira. Should I go ahead with this until we have something from the studio? Okay, Mira, I'll go through the question. So how do you assess that there has been a shift in the mindset due to the pandemic from public transport to cars? How can this be counteracted? Yeah, so that's the question.
Can you repeat it, please?
Okay, I will go. I will do so again.
Reformulate it.
Yeah. Okay, this time I won't read it. But yeah, the question is like this: how do you assess there have been a shift in the mindset of the users from public transport to from cars to public transport, vice versa? How did you assess this, and how do you assess it?
Okay, before we had a period of Corona and everything, what happened in the pandemic. So everybody were very closed, not just cities, but all countries were closed. There is no movement, there's no mobility of people, and also there's no touch with nature. We were all closed, and people were eager to go to connect with the nature again, but also they were afraid to go to public transport. You know, so you have we saw when we finished when the period of Corona and everything was a little calmed down because it's not finished yet. Also. We saw that we have decreased the number of passengers in our public utility company for transport. So also what we saw is that people go more with cars because they are afraid of using public transport because of the amount of people that are coming and go into the public transport. And also, we saw that people change a little bit their habit and they use more cycling bicycles. For Novi Sad, that's ordinary because the city is flat and we have a lot of cycling roads, a lot of it. And it's very easy to go by the cycling wherever you want to go, and much cheaper and much healthier. Yeah, you know. So what we did to again, how to say, make people to use public transport. We finished our rail from the Belgrade to the Novi Sad, which is Belgrade is the capital city of the Serbia, and it's a completely electric railway. But it also connects some part of our city together. So it's cheaper. Much more cheaper. It's very comfort. It's environmental friendly, yeah. And for the people, it's a lot quicker. So people again start to use that sort of public transport. Also, we lower our prices of tickets for the buses. And what we did also is that we promote our new buses. They are going to better fuel, the fuel which is not air polluting so much as the other old buses. And we are trying to create a different mindset of the people and to get them the aim that even they could go with their own cars to the job. Maybe it's better for them, for the nature, for whole health, to go by cycling and to go by public transport. And slowly, I think it's returning to the start position before Corona, but still, I think it's going to be a very long time to people to adjust to not using cars so much.
Thank you. Yeah, no, an excellent example of how do you highlight the advantages of sustainable urban mobility, focusing on health, social, and economic, to use it for people to change their way of life into a more sustainable one. I have another question here laid out. It's for Professor Ayşen. Can I go ahead?
Sure.
Yeah. In a mega city like Istanbul, how do you control the expansion of the city and the need for more and more transport services?
Heavy one.
Well, this is obviously a wonderful question, actually. It's very difficult, I know. I guess it will be naturally, because you cannot do this. And there should be a ban or something like that coming from the central government, but nobody can do this right now. Only thing is that naturally, you know, Istanbul is a very expensive city and getting expensive every day because of the, you know, rents, etc., because there is no supply, enough supply for 20 million. Legally, it's population population is around 16 million, but as I mentioned before, we are over 20 million people right now. So this boosts up the rents, and everything is very expensive. Right now, it's naturally occurring, People are staying wherever they are, but there are some plans. Well, city planners, etc., are talking about it, but this is a difficult story, and it's a very hot issue right now. Yeah, inner immigration is very important stuff. Well, but I should mention that right now we cannot say legally don't come over here, or you can come over only if you have such, criteria, etc. There's nothing like that. The only thing is you encourage people not to come, or this is an important issue. Okay. And yes, basically.
Thanks for noting that out. Do we have, yes, we have a few questions.
May I also?
Yeah, please go ahead.
We will give the floor, of course, to our audience.
Adriana Rac, Bosnia and Herzegovina, city of East Sarajevo. Firstly, many thanks all panelists for great facts and concrete recommendations that they shared with us. Secondly, I really have to say that I'm very glad because the majority of today's panelists are women, and it's a real power, I think. And finally, I have a question for Mira, but I think that Ms. Anuela and Ms. Ayşen also can answer. The question is, having in mind previous experiences in implementation of measures, which measure actually had an impact on reduction of air pollution? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the question. It's a good one, especially because of my expertise. I'm coming from the environmental sector, well, we did a lot of things in the past 4 years, actually. Nowadays, in Serbia, we have actually a very strong green movement, which is actually confronting the government because of the air quality status and because of the dirty technologies that we have today in our country. We needed to change something, especially on the local level. I'm saying from the views of the Novi Sad. So what we did, we spoke with our partners. Those days were EBRD, and we found a way to actually buy 100 new buses for our public utility company and to change the fuel from the gasoline to natural gas. Also to buy 10 electrical buses, which is going to be actually cycling and go all around the city in circles. And those measures definitely did get the results. But also what get the results is that we promote cycling all over the city. So so the people are actually often use bicycles and e-cycling and e-motors and not come into the city center so often. Then we building a public space garage a little bit outside of the city center, and we are going to forbid coming with cars in the city center. But first, we are going to create a spot for the people to leave their cars. And those are, I think, the measures that actually were the best ones and give such results, especially for the public transport, because all of the buses are going around all the time through the city, and you know there is a lot of pollution from the traffic. So that's I think that's all the measures that that gave the result.
Okay.
Yes, okay.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mira. So now we have some few more questions from the audience. Can we have the microphone here, please?
So Ilrik Musliu from Pristina Municipality. Actually, I have two questions for Tirana. It looks that in the mobility you have done a great job, but I want to ask you about the SECAP. Do you have any action plan, or do you have undertaken any activity regarding the SECAP, or you are in the same level as other countries in the region that now we will start with creating the action plan? And the second question is about the mobility. In the fleet of the buses in the Tirana, is there electric buses or not? And what about the plan of the electric buses? And also regarding the mobility, the infrastructure of the electric vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So with regards to the strategic, to the SECA, I mean, that's something that we started without even knowing we needed to start with. And like I said, our urban development plan actually includes all the components of different strategies, whether that is the mobility plan, whether that is the climate mitigation plans, the Green City Action Plan, and so on and so forth. So we do not have a document called that as of now. Obviously, you know, it's to come, but the bulk of the work has been already done, because in our urban development plan, we have the plan for water treatments, the plan for the development, the intensity of the development of the city, the plan for mitigating the threats from climate change, and so on and so forth. So it's a matter of labeling. So I'm not worried about that in particular. The electric buses story, and that connecting to the electric charging infrastructure. The electric buses story is a little bit a story of too much privatization, if you ask me. So in Tirana, we do not subsidize public transportation as of now. And your colleague here was super right to not be depending on subsidies, because, you know, whenever we're talking about, oh, but the subway is so, it's so cheap and it's so fast. Yeah, but who pays for it? And unfortunately, in the city, we would not be able to afford subsidies that would be increasing more and more. But that's not to say that they shouldn't exist. That's not to say that that should not be a public enterprise. It's to say that from previous administrations, all of our buses fleets were privatized. So the change that we're doing with the buses is that we are reappropriating certain bus lines in order for us to make an investment on the fleet, because it's unrealistic to ask for a contractor to invest in the fleet that you want without actually subsidizing anything that out of what they do. And so that's what we're doing, but that is part of a more general plan, who I have a very good colleague here, who is from your side, but also from our side, Christian Hai. We're working on really the whole mobility transportation plan for the city, in which we are together with the German government as well. We're working on the dedicated bus lane infrastructure that would then be able to accommodate better buses, more electric buses, and that whole fleet to be able to change, which then would also require subsidies for changing that fleet and making it all electric. Right now, we have one of the main lines in our city is hybrid, so the fleet is hybrid. So it's still a big change from those old fuel buses that were just pushing bad air throughout the city. In the electric charging infrastructure, you are extremely correct, and we've been pushing for this in all possible sites. But this is, along with what the doctor was saying, an issue of market as well. So it's a back and forth trip between the demand and the supply. And so we, in all of our public investment, in all of our public spaces where we have parking spots, we have free electric charging. So the city is offering this. But this is not enough for the whole country to buy into this thing. And so our proposal to the ministry who controls gas stations and stuff like that was that up to a certain amount of space, they need to have electric charges and be able to bill for that just in case that people are, because we see an increased demand in electric vehicles. The city is doing its own infrastructure, and that's a given. Even in private developments, we are telling them, if you have a certain number of parking spots and garages, you should also be able to offer this for electric vehicles. So anything that is depending locally, going back to my point, we're doing it. Then, following us then would come the stronger, more stable, let's say, structure in which you build that infrastructure.
Okay, thank you, Anuela. Thank you for this solution-driven answers. Do we have any more questions? We do have a bit of time before we close. I still have a question left here from the chat, but I don't have a name for it. So I'm not sure who is it addressed to, but I will read.
Someone.
Yeah, I will read it through. How are the needs of economically disadvantaged groups being considered when planning and implementing measures, especially when introducing new elements into the public transport system for all guests? Okay. Yeah, question for all guests, so please go ahead.
Maybe just then a quick answer from you, if you want. You want? You would like?
Well, I would only say that, as I mentioned before, our SUMP, one of the most important aims were keep the accessibility valid for everybody. This is very important. And the prices, yes, municipalities just to serve for, socially little bit lower income groups better. They reduces the prices. Student prices are different. And right now, IMM, offered something like that. If you're pregnant or if you have kids together with you lower than 8 years old, I do believe, it's free of charge up to a certain, it's up to 4 years, I guess, free of charge. And after 4 years of the kid, after 4 years, you have to pay a little bit reduced price. You do such kind of nice things just to, save them. That's the only thing I can say.
Okay, thank you. Mira?
Yes, my point from last answer, or the first one, I'm not really sure, was that we need to be, we cannot be affordable for everybody. We need to be, but it's not really, it's not realistic. The government can, not even local or the government in global can afford to pay or to have a free transportation for everybody, at least in Serbia. And I think those are the issues everywhere, even in Germany. So what we need to do, we need to find solution how to increase or to decrease the expenses for the fuels, to get more affordable transportation, public transportation. So what we need to do, definitely, we need to find solution for cheaper, for cheaper energy or for the renewable energy, from the sun, from the solar, from the water, from the wind, and for that we definitely need government's help. At least we are on the local level, and the government, especially in Southeast Europe, need help from the European Union in financial terms, and also in the terms of how we are going to do that, because that really is transition from one sort of from one way of using one sort of fuel to be zero carbon state. So.
Thank you, Mira. Anuela, same question.
My approach is completely different personally, and this, do not quote me as an institution. I think that every time we talk supply, we talk subsidies, we talk help, we talk a system, we're talking about a depletable source of income. What if we were to charge people who choose their personal vehicles and charge them so that we can then be able to offer transportation to those who choose public transportation? And that is a 1 + 1 makes 3. So whenever we're talking about we need more money, we're talking about money that we take, we use, it gets burned. Yeah, they go somewhere, great. They help some people, great. But how do you keep this up? I mean, you cannot keep it up with your government, you cannot keep it up with your budget, with your tax, with the same schema. The whole different approach to how we collect money and how we spend money should change. If you want to be driven, or if you want to drive with your own personal vehicle, you should pay for that luxury. And the money that you get out of that, we get out of that, pays for the little guy who cannot afford the bus ticket. And that's both sustainable, and it's also an equalizer for your city. Because, and again, not to complain about governments, but somebody here tell me if your government has an everlasting source of money that would be able to pay for everybody's needs on anything. The money will be taken from somewhere, will be depleted from a source that needs it to another source. It's the same pool. But what if we were to reallocate our individual budgets in a different way? So going to school, going to work with your own personal vehicle should not be comparable to choosing public transportation. Should be a lot more expensive, and not just about fuels and not just about taxes, but also you should be paying for people who could have otherwise had a freer street than your car did.
Thank you, Anuela. Very strong stance on.
Very strong stance.
But looking forward to the same statement from your state uniform.
Okay. Yes.
And thanks a lot. I have the same question for our online panelists. It's some final thought, if you can share with us before we close.
Yes.
So in whichever order, Maia, please go ahead first. Maia, are you still with us? Sylwia, can we go to you until maybe there's some technical difficulties? So it was the same question, or just some final thoughts you can share with us. So, the needs of economically disadvantaged groups, how should they be considered when planning and introducing measures in public transport systems?
Yeah, that is a very interesting and very complex question. I think what we have already discussed covered it very nicely. Definitely thinking about the bottom-up approach when planning projects and involving citizens in planning projects. So ensuring that those groups also are listened to, that they feel that even though they are disadvantaged, they are not forgotten, because it's not just about giving them money, I think. It's about ensuring that they feel that they can impact what happens in their neighborhoods or in their cities, that their circumstances are being paid attention to. So ensuring that there is dialogue with all different kinds of stakeholders, including vulnerable groups, ensuring that local authorities know what the situation actually is, because I often notice that there is lack of ex-ante evaluation. The local authorities kind of have a gut feeling of what needs to be done and how to do it, but it's not really backed up by doing proper research and proper focus groups, for example, to get all the information from. So apart from what was said already, I would emphasize the need to have people on board to understand their needs and to understand what would work better for them. And when we are saying that the drivers should pay for those who are not able to afford bus tickets, yes, and we should also educate them so they don't feel penalized for being able to afford a car, because there are so many taxes that those who are able, let's say, who have a bit higher level of life, that they need to pay already. So let's make sure that they actually understand that they contribute to helping those who really need that. And that also goes back to having consultations and citizens participating in policy planning. I would say that these are most important issues, but they are very difficult issues, and there are no easy solutions, especially if there is no guaranteed funding for this. And that I would go back then to looking for different means of financing projects so that local authorities can have additional pool of money, maybe transferred from another sector or another area that they could also use to support the most vulnerable.
Thank you. That goes very well along what Anuela just presented herself. Fabio, can I have your final thoughts grouped into 1 minute or less?
I will try to be extremely brief. Well, promoting active mobility is basically the best way to democratize mobility. Whoever is a pedestrian and the bike is quite cheap. But you need to plan the city, as I said before, like in a 15 minutes neighborhood. And within 15 minutes, you should be able to reach schools, doctors, shops, and whatever you might need. And I agree with Mayor Tirana. People have the right to move, not to drive their cars. But then in practical terms, taxing the use of cars is not that simple, because sometimes the cost of collecting the taxes could be higher. And but that will require much more than a minute.
Thank you very much, Fabio.
It was really on time.
Yeah.
It was really on time. Thank you very much. And now I would like to thank to all our panelists. It was really very valuable to have you today with us. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Thank you very much. And yes, you can go. You can. You are now awarded. So thank you. And now, yes, we have another few minutes to close our today's conference day. Our Southeast Europe conference day is very close to be ended. But before we leave you for a longer break, we would like to summarize a bit. And of course, we did this summary based on what we have heard, but for sure you will have your summary that you will take away from here. Firstly, I would say that we have heard from Berlin that our first step should be change of paradigm. It is something we need to start and then go ahead. From Slovenian experience, we heard that new way of thinking, a new way of planning, and finally developing suggestions to national level would help us in this process. From Fabio, we heard that there is no only horizontal and a vertical process, there is a spiral, and this spiral process can help us also to align all our energy, transport and climate planning. Also during the panel session and during our breaks, we heard many times about the networking, necessity of cooperation with other sectors, integration of energy, transport and climate planning and implementation. Of course, we need to engage different stakeholders, work with various levels of government, but not to forget our citizens. Listen to them and cooperate with them. With this, I would conclude the official part of the session. And of course, at the end, I would like to thank, on behalf of our team, to all who joined us today, also here in Berlin, but also online. I would also like to say big thanks to Berlin team here. They're really great hosts, and everything was very smoothly organized, and we enjoyed the stay here. Also, I don't have to forget our teams in the region who helped us to make this happen. Team in Sarajevo, in Belgrade, Podgorica, Skopje, Tirana, Pristina, and Istanbul. Thank you all. And yes, I would like to invite Berlin participants for a family photo, and I wish you a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you.
We did it.
Congratulations.
Yes.